mengumumkan ketibaan Yang Berhormat Rafizi Ramli, Menteri Ekonomi.
Bangunkan Malaysia Madani, sepenuh hati, jiwa, semangat, terus meyakini Malaysia Madani. Ayo seluruh anak Pertiwi, semarakkan Malaysia Madani, sepenuh hati, jiwa, semangat, terus meyakini Malaysia Madani.
Hadirin dipohon berdiri untuk bersama-sama kita nyanyikan lagu negaraku. Hadirin dipersilakan duduk. Yang Berhormat Rafizi Ramli, Menteri Ekonomi, Yang Berbahagia Datuk Nur Azmi bin Dirun, Ketua Kementerian Ekonomi, seterusnya Yang Berbahagia Datuk-Datuk, Tuan-Tuan dan Puan-Puan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Majlis mengucapkan selamat datang dan menalu-alukan kehadiran Yang Berhormat Menteri, Yang Berbahagia Datuk-Datuk, Tuan-Tuan dan Puan-Puan, ke sesi Madani Mendengar, sesi libat urus rancangan Malaysia ke-13 bersama industri. Terlebih dahulu, marilah kita sama-sama memanjatkan setinggi-tinggi kesyukuran kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala kerana dengan keizinannya dapatlah kita berkumpul dalam majlis pada hari ini. Zikir munajat pembersih jiwa, doa di pohon menjana takwa. Bagi memberkati majlis kita pada hari ini, marilah sama-sama kita menadah tangan dan mengaminkan bacaan doa. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahilladzi bi ni'matihi tatimmus shalihat. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulina al-amin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma antal azizul jalil. Sesungguhnya kami pada petang ini merafakkan kesyukuran dan pujian terhadap-Mu atas kurniaan-Mu yang tidak ternilai. Allahumma ya Hakim, ya Azim. Sesungguhnya kami berhimpun di sini bersempena sesi Madani Mendengar, sesi libat urus rancangan Malaysia ke-13 bersama industri, menyatakan kesungguhan, komitmen dan iltizam kami dengan ruh dan semangat untuk menerajui pembangunan sosioekonomi negara yang inklusif, progresif dan mampan demi kemakmuran dan kesejahteraan rakyat. Justru berkati pertemuan kami, berkatilah jua usaha-usaha kami, ilhamkanlah dalam fikiran dan minda kami idea yang bernas, pandangan yang jelas dan keputusan yang waras. Kurniakanlah kepada kami limpahan ilmu yang berguna dan kefahaman yang benar. Satukanlah hati-hati kami, ya Allah. Eratkanlah silaturahim dalam kalangan kami. Padukanlah tenaga dan usaha kami untuk memartabatkan agama, bangsa dan negara secara bersama demi mencapai kecemerlangan dan kegemilangan. Allahumma ja'alna jama'ana hadha jama'an marhuma wa tafarruqna min ba'dihi tafarruqan ma'suma wa la taj'alillahumma fina wa la ma'ana wa la man yatba'una shaqiyyan wa la matrudan wa la mahruma. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. Alhamdulillah. Jadi untuk makluman hadirin sekalian, Kementerian Ekonomi telah menjalinkan kerjasama dengan Rakan strategik Kementerian Ekonomi iaitu Perbadanan Produktiviti Malaysia bagi menjayakan sesi libat urus rancangan Malaysia ke-13 bersama industri pada hari ini. Untuk makluman hadirin sekalian, sebanyak 14 nexus productivity telah dikenal pasti bagi tujuan sesi libat urus pada hari ini. Antaranya ialah electrical dan elektronik, chemical, digital, agro-food, machinery and equipment, private healthcare, tourism, logistics, construction and built environment, pharmaceutical, automotive and aerospace. Jadi tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, sesi pada hari ini merupakan sesi pertama sesi libat urus rancangan Malaysia ke-13 bersama industri dan melibatkan 3 nexus productivity iaitu electrical and electronics, automotive and aerospace. Seterusnya, tanpa melengahkan masa, kita memulakan majlis pada hari ini dengan hormatnya saya menjemput yang berbahagia Datuk TSV Valuvan untuk membuat pembentangan kerangka rancangan Malaysia ke-13. Dipersilakan Yang Bahagia Datuk.
Boleh. Okay. Terima kasih saudara pengurusi majlis yang bahagia, yang berhormat Menteri, yang bahagia Datuk KSU, Datuk-Datuk, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. Izinkan saya untuk membentangkan sedikit mengenai rancangan Malaysia ke-13 dan hala tuju kita. I know today is 11.11, so ramai yang tempted untuk buat shopping dan sebagainya. But today we are not going to give any discount lah. Kita hanya ada strategi-strategi dan kita nak mendengar daripada tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. Many of you I knew before, many of you, tapi ada yang saya tak kenal lagi hari ini. Alright. So saya ada 33 slide. So satu slide I will take about 0.18 second. So it will be very fast. Okay. Next. Start slide nombor 4. Okay, tujuan adalah untuk membentangkan rancangan Malaysia ke-13 dan SLU ini juga adalah to get feedback from all of you by the Minister himself so that we can have a concrete discussion and also inputs for us for the RMK13. Some latar belakang. So you know that Malaysia selalu ada 5 tahun perancangan development dan this is our 13th rancangan Malaysia ke-13. Jadi kita dah ada rancangan Malaysia ke-12. This is the first rancangan Malaysia yang mempunyai sektor-sektor terpilih yang kita telah buat. Kalau tuan-tuan dan puan-puan baca RMK12, we have 8 sectors industri yang kita telah pilih sebagai industri berpotensi tinggi. Termasuklah E&D, aerospace dan sampailah ke biomass. Dan kita sambung sedikit dalam high growth, KSP, kajian separuh penggal, tapi dijenamakan semula sebagai high growth, high value, which is a part for RMK13. So we are here as a kesinambungan daripada KSP ke RMK13. So kita dah start SLU dan juga perbincangan dengan industri dan juga dengan stakeholders since June 2024 dan the best part is kita akan bentangkan di Parlimen pada 3 Julai. This is the first time in history rancangan Malaysia dibuat dengan begitu cepat untuk dibentangkan di Parlimen. The next slide. So this is the structure of RMK13 yang kita gunakan, iaitu kita dapatkan top down dan juga bottom up. Ya, kita ada interagency planning group di mana kita ada kementerian-kementerian yang bersidang dan di bawah kementerian ada technical working group. This technical working group, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan mungkin terlibat dan di bawah technical working group ada focus group which is more detailed micro discussion will be held dengan tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. I believe most of you have already involved dalam focus group sebab kita dah dapat sedikit maklumat daripada tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. Next slide. So I go to trend mega yang meliputi mengapakah RMK13 ni kita buat sedemikian rupa. So mega trend. So ada 4 mega trend iaitu satu, of course perubahan geopolitik dan juga keputusan pemilihan di Amerika juga mainkan peranan penting. So we have China +1, Europe +1 dan geopolitik ini sangat penting untuk menentukan kedudukan ekonomi dan di mana Malaysia dapat mengambil kesempatan untuk mendapatkan investment. Ya. Yang kedua adalah perubahan teknologi digital is exponential. This is not like first industrial revolution sampai ke third industrial revolution, fourth industrial revolution pun telah pun bermula dan sekarang mereka cakap pasal 5th Industrial Revolution, but the technology is very exponential. Perubahan demografi dan kualiti hidup, I will go each of that dalam slide yang seterusnya lah. Perubahan demografi dan kualiti hidup juga mainkan peranan penting masa kita nak buat rancangan Malaysia ke-13 supaya kita tidak mahu sesiapa tertinggal, dan juga of course krisis kesihatan bumi yang kita nak tengok juga. The next slide. So the geopolitik ni, kalau kita tengok dia ada dua part, satu global dan juga Malaysia, kiri dan kanan. So you can see KDNK dunia juga lebih meningkat lebih perlahan, tapi KDNK negara kita diunjur lebih tinggi sedikit lah, 3.6% dari setahun, daripada 1.6 trilion kepada 4.1 trilion. Next slide. Untuk perubahan tech and digital, so beberapa teknologi baru telah berubah. Saya exponential, advanced robotics telah pun mainkan peranan penting. Kita ada cloud computing. Now cloud computing dah, kalau just cloud computing saja tidak memadai. You must have AI, cloud computing server dan sebagainya. Advanced genomic. AI sendiri is becoming more and more important untuk satu-satu negara ya. AI sekarang ni dah ada agentic AI. Satu lagi benda baru 2021 baru diperkenalkan, masih dalam peringkat tu, but whether we are in that line ataupun kita masih lagi dengan AI lama dan sebagainya. So these things really will shape how we want to write the rancangan Malaysia ke-13. Next, demografi, we are going to be negara menua, dan kita ada peningkatan kesenjangan pendapatan antara yang kaya dan juga rendah, yang kurang kaya. Peningkatan penyakit tidak berjangkit juga mainkan peranan penting, dan cabaran untuk mengekalkan keharmonian dan perpaduan rakyat juga mainkan peranan penting. So this all must be aligned dan dimasukkan dalam rancangan Malaysia ke-13 supaya negara kita maju dan sampai ke destinasi yang kita hendak capai. Yang last, keempat adalah krisis kesihatan bumi. So I just take one example. Kita pelepasan karbon 286 juta tahun 2005. So kita mungkin akan keluarkan sampai 514 juta tan karbon dioksida, dan setara perubahan iklim, cabaran jaminan makanan is all mainkan peranan penting. Selain daripada megatrend, kita ada isu drop domestik. Contohnya adalah kekurangan tenaga kerja mahir, ketidakupayaan PMKS untuk meningkatkan skala, dan juga ekosistem RDCN yang kurang memuaskan lah. Kita punya RDCI, kalau kita tengok GERD, kita hanya 0.94% kalau dibandingkan dengan negara Eropah ataupun negara Asia yang lain. Kesejahteraan rakyat, tekanan kos sara hidup yang tinggi, pembangunan antara wilayah dan juga yang tidak seimbang, kemampanan, perubahan iklim, kehilangan biodiversiti dan pencemaran alam sekitar, dan pelaksanaan SDG dan ESG sangat terhad. Satu survei yang dibuat oleh SME Corp, kita dapati not many yang tahu pasal ESG dan menunggu kita untuk melakukan sesuatu. This is very something important. Dan tata kelola, salah laku dan rasuah, jurang antara dasar dan pelaksanaan, dan juga jurang penyampaian perkhidmatan sektor awam berbanding dengan jangkaan rakyat. So I will skip many slides dan saya terus pergi pada slide nombor 20. So today we have aerospace, E&E dan juga automotive. So setiap industri mempunyai dia punya cabaran, tapi saya nak rumuskan problem yang ada ni. Satu adalah kita perlu meningkatkan kita punya productivity kepada high value investment dan high value production ataupun services yang kita nak buat. Many of us tahun 70-an, 80-an kita menggalakkan investment datang ke Malaysia ni because we want more jobs and more infrastructure untuk datang ke Malaysia. So this is what we have done all the while. Tapi bila kita dah a bit matured, tahun 2000 dan sebagainya, we are looking at more quality investment. Our value chain dalam industri ini perlu meningkat. But what happened, this is majority of us dalam industri ini, kita lihat mereka yang starting 70-80an, bagaimana mereka bermula. Most of us lah, kita masih dalam takut yang tu. We are stay there. We yet to improve our value chain. So this is one of the problem yang kita hadapi sekarang ni, that we have to tingkatkan benda itu. Sebab when we tingkatkan itulah baru kita ada pulangan yang baik, investment yang baik, gaji yang baik dan juga tenaga kerja yang mahir. This is what we're going to do. Then second one is talent, tenaga kerja yang tak cukup. This is what we all having problem now. Tetapi government is taking all the steps to make sure that talent yang kita nak dapatkan tu talent yang dapat memenuhi industri. We have a lot of plan that we are doing, but saya cuma nak bagi tahu kepada industri. Talent we are addressing based on what the industry have said to us, but jangan kita terlalu memberitahu kita atau bagi pada pentas mana-mana kita bagi tahu talent tak cukup dalam negara ni, talent tak cukup dalam negara ni. Then what will happen to investor? He will think that Malaysia memang tak cukup talent, but our talent is here and then our talent is going out because tak cukup kerja di sini. So we don't make it very big thing. Talent memang ada dalam Malaysia, dan if we can offer a good salary dan juga good job to them, they will retain here. So and of course, saya pun beritahu private sector must take the lead role dalam kita punya yang akan datang ni, because we want all of you to be part of the RMK13 and also be part of the planning and juga pelaksanaan. So this why this SLU semua ada, YBM is here, so to listen to you and then we will make it happen. And then after you give your idea, we want you to take the lead of the things. Kalau tidak, saya tengok ada beberapa perancangan yang telah kita buat, tetapi I don't see the reaction of the industry to what we have said. Contohnya JSSZ. Kita pergi negara luar, the whole industry negara luar tu, without we are saying, they already responding to JSSZ. What's happening in JSSZ, whether we can come in, what we have to do, where we want to invest and all that. But dalam negara kita, bagi saya saya tak nampak benda tu, the reaction from industri negara, domestic. Dan kita ada KL20. So what you want to achieve dalam KL20 kita dapat. So what is your reaction? Bila kita announce satu investment, 1 billion investment is coming to Malaysia. What is our response to that investment? Whether we are ready, or I want to be part of that investment, supply chain. Government, can you help me? Tapi saya tak pernah jumpa benda-benda ni. When I ask them PMKS, and PMKS pun dia tak respond kepada apa yang saya tanya. But this is something that is worrying us. We want you all to be alert with what we are doing and then be part of that and take the lead. Saya cuma nampak industri respon bila ada kenaikan gaji, minimum wage, and then I can see you responding. But other than that, you are not responding. Dan inovasi. Last kali saya nampak kita kekurangan inovasi, dan I hope that industri-industri kita ni lebih maju dalam menggalakkan inovasi proses. Ada 18 inovasi, but take charge of process and product. Satu contoh, orang yang buat peti sejuk tu, the inventor yang buat peti sejuk tu ambil money because they invented peti sejuk. But people who make more money is people like Coca-Cola and Pepsi using that fridge. It's how they invented the thing smaller, so they can use the fridge to get more money. So we don't need to kita buat benda yang besar, but something benda-benda kecil yang industri kita boleh buat. Okay. Dan slide seterusnya adalah slide nombor 28. So this RMK13 adalah, macam saya, is kesinambungan bawah KSP. If you baca KSP, then you can see most of it that we are bringing back macam high growth, high value dan sebagainya. And berdasarkan kepada kerangka ekonomi madani, mengambil kira pencapaian semasa serta peringkat global. Dan tempoh pelaksanaan ia 2026 hingga 2030, and then we will table this in Parliament pada Julai 2025. Saya bagi pada slide nombor 30. So senario Malaysia pada 2040, kita mahukan apakah ekspresi Malaysia pada tahun itu adalah kehidupan produktif dan bermaruah, pembangunan inklusif dan mampan, jejak karbon yang rendah, good governance, negara maju dan rakyat berinovatif dan peneraju ekonomi serantau. Dalam next slide, dalam RMK 13 kali ini kita ada 19 fokus, 19 tumpuan, dan contohnya adalah sektor strategik, high growth, high value, sektor ketiga, social enterprise, GovTech, bakul makanan serantau, reformasi pasaran buruh dan kecekapan sektor awam. So I would like to rumuskan seperti inilah. When we take a flight from point A to point B, so we have already destined, this is what we want to achieve, point A to point B. So point A, B is our destination. Kalau kita semua naik kapal terbang, when we decided B is our destination, like RMK 13, kita decide there we want to go. So we trust the pilot and we take the flight and go. You can see turbulence happening kan. Mesti ada turbulence dalam tu dan sebagainya. But kita tak adalah melompat ataupun pergi hijack the flight ataupun kita buat sesuatu. We leave it to the pilot. Kita kena ketatkan belt dan sebagainya. But we leave it to the pilot to bring us safe dalam turbulence tu sampai ke destination B. So this same thing like RMK 13. This is destination that we all going to make. Then we hope all of you can support us to make sure that we can reach the final destination that we are thinking of. So with that, thank you very much. Dan saya harap apa yang saya bentang ini cukup dan kalau tidak, slide ini boleh di-sharekan kepada tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih diucapkan kepada Yang Berbahagia Datuk TSV Valuvan Value di atas pembentangan sebentar tadi. Jadi Yang Berbahagia Datuk tuan-tuan dan puan-puan telah melihat bagaimana Kementerian Ekonomi telah bekerja keras selama ini untuk melihat pembangunan negara pada masa hadapan. Jadi saya mengajak Yang Berbahagia Datuk tuan-tuan dan puan-puan untuk bersama-sama kita membina negara untuk menjadi lebih maju dan berdaya saing pada masa hadapan. Seterusnya, para hadirin dihormati sekalian, majlis pada petang ini akan diteruskan lagi dengan sesi Madani Mendengar bersama Yang Berhormat Menteri Ekonomi. Untuk makluman semua, sesi Madani Mendengar merupakan sesi interaksi dua hala antara pihak industri bersama YB Menteri. Tujuan utama sesi ini adalah bagi mendapatkan input serta fokus keperluan dan perancangan pembangunan untuk dipertimbangkan dalam penggubalan dokumen RMK 13. Tanpa melengahkan masa lagi, dengan sukacitanya saya menyebut dan mempersilakan Yang Berhormat Rafizi Ramli, Menteri Ekonomi, diiringi Yang Berbahagia Datuk Nur Azmi bin Dirun, Ketua Susah Kementerian Ekonomi, ke naik ke atas pentas. Jadi sebelum memulakan majlis pada hari ini, sedikit panduan kepada Yang Berbahagia Datuk tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. Yang Berbahagia Datuk dan tuan-tuan dan puan-puan dialu-alukan untuk mengajukan soalan sekiranya terdapat sebarang pertanyaan, kekeliruan ataupun sumbang saran yang perlu diberitahu secara umum. Jadi saya menjemput tuan-tuan dan puan-puan untuk menyatakan nama dan juga wakil industri yang diwakili untuk catatan pihak repertua yang berada di barisan belakang. Mereka bersedia mencatat segalanya pada hari ini untuk tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. Jadi saya menyerahkan majlis kepada Yang Berhormat Menteri. Dipersilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Selalunya sesi ini kita buat dari satu negeri ke satu negeri. Selalunya saya kena berdiri 3 jam. Tapi satu sebab saya demam hari ini. So I have difficulty with my voice. Secondly, because this is with the industry, most probably you will grill and it become 8 hours. So, saya dengan Datuk Nur Azmi kena duduk hari ini. Just to give a perspective, I think that the value has presented. It's all right. I'll manage it. RMK ni selalunya mengambil masa yang panjang. In the past, the preparation for 1 5-year plan can go as long as 2 years. And prosesnya itu is multi-layered. Jadi dia boleh bermula daripada peringkat focus group sampailah peringkat industri, and it takes so long for the process to take place. Proses yang sama sedang berlaku sebenarnya kan. Cuma saya merasakan bahawa if we allow too much layers, selalunya the planning eventually becomes very much apa nama ni, saya nak kata top down semata-mata tu pun tak betul lah. But I think things are filtered out by the time that it comes to the highest level. So sebab itu beban kepada Kementerian Ekonomi, that means that we have to sit down with multiple groups, and the strain on the time too is real, considering that we have to do this within half the time that we used to carry out the planning. Selalunya 1.5 tahun, now we will do it within 9 months. So that's number one. Number two, my observation about any national plan, whether it's 5-year plan, whether it's sectoral specific plan, I don't think there's a lot of argument about the direction or the aspiration where we want to go. The big gap is in terms of, first, the expectation, and that gap usually is caused by program designs. Government has certain views about program designs. Industry has certain views about program designs. And if we are not careful, we may repeat problems in the past, where while we don't disagree on the trajectory and the destination, kalau macam tadi Datuk Velu give the analogy of getting from point A to point B, and nobody argues about you're going from point A to point B, but actually you may land safely by taking different routes. And different routes may cause different turbulence, different costing, and completely different ticket price. And that's exactly the harmonization that we hope we can do better this time around. We want to make sure that while the destination is fully subscribed, everyone is on board, we also want to make sure that the structural issues that the government has to deal is fully recognized and harmonized with the needs of the stakeholders. But most importantly, and this is where the feedback is useful for the government, program designs, if it's done from the top-down perspective, may not meet the requirement and the expectation of the stakeholders, which is the industry. So one good example about the problem of program designs, industry will always say, give us this much money, give us this allocation, give us this and that. So over the years, Malaysian administrations successively had allocated substantial amount of money for capability building to different industries. The amount that the budget carries is substantial. But after a while, you look at the success and effectiveness of a program, then I think everyone can conclude that perhaps we didn't get the best value or the best outcome out of that investment. And the problem is not so much about whether allocation was given or whether there was an objective. The problem usually is with program design, because if government continues to just allocate and then distribute, then it's very much output driven. And when it's output driven, as far as the government is concerned, we have spent 500 million for this industry. Whether or not the 500 million translates into the kind of capability building or the kind of programs that fix the structural issues and scale up the industry is a different thing altogether. So over the years, what we have is that we have this dichotomy where the private sector will always feel that government is not supportive enough. The government will say, but hang on, this is how much that has been spent, and this is how much that has been allocated over the years. But it doesn't bring about the kind of changes that we've had. So that is one critical gap that we would like to seek your opinion and your suggestion. Of course, you know, the biggest difficulty for Ministry of Economy is to harmonize all this. Because if we speak to 10 industries will ask for 2 billion each. So 10 industries will say, give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we'll bring you to the moon. And that has become part and parcel of my job almost on a weekly basis. You will have a stakeholder who says, give us this and we will be able to do that. But of course, apart from fiscal constraint, we also need to harmonize, because while a sectoral perspective by a particular industry looks into the need of an industry, at the level of government, it is very important for us to make sure that whatever decisions we make, especially one that concerns the structure, will not have unintended consequences. And it is usually the unintended consequences that is not on anyone's plate, but exclusively on government's plate. So these are the challenges that we hope we will be able to do better this time around. We have a few structural issues, as Dato' Valu has pointed out. We know about the need for us to strengthen our public finances. And it's not so much for lack of money. I do feel that eventually we will get through that stage where our public finances will be in a much better shape. And that's not too far down the road. It's only 2-3 years down the road. What concerns me most when it comes to fiscal spending is to make sure that you reach the sweet spot where whatever fiscal injection strengthens our industry and economy rather than weakens it. Because too much of a good thing eventually may become bad for us. Anything, sugar, medicine, too much of a good thing will weaken us. So likewise, too much of government's fiscal injection, if it does not translate into a reform of the structure of the industry, eventually will make the industry less competitive in the long run. So that's one structural challenge that we have to deal with. I think we all know the challenge for talents. The war on talent is not specific to Malaysia. The challenge that we have now when it comes to getting the right people with the right skill to do the right set of jobs is a global problem. Much of what is being fought in Europe and US politically and socially revolve around war of talents. It's about people, immigration, and so on. We also have that problem here that we have to manage properly. But I think we all can agree that we aspire to see more and more Malaysian doing a better job that pays higher. And for that to happen, we need to loosen our dependency on low-skilled foreign workers. And I think it's quite difficult for us to disagree on that. How are we going to do it? Balancing and harmonizing between competing needs of the industry and the economy. That's something that I feel that we can focus further on the program design. We agree that our education needs a continuous reform. In the last 2 years, Ministry of Economy working with Human Resource Ministry, working with the Higher Education Ministry, we've piloted, for example, a demand-driven talent in this country. For many, many years, up until I suppose even now, our talent planning has been very much supply-driven. We look at the top, okay, this is the kind of industries that will grow. How many people do we need at the graduate level, at the semi-skill level, and then we build our capacity, either public universities or vocational institutions, and then, you know, the output of each government agency is to make sure that the recruitment and the churning out of these talents follow the national plans. You and I know that may not work anymore. If the whole basis of our talent planning in this country is based on supply-driven talent management, it will not be able to meet the demand of the industry, especially as we pivot into higher value chain, higher tech, because the fast-paced nature of skill requirements that suit the kind of economy that we're going to build, definitely it has to be supplemented by a different kind of talent management. So we have piloted demand-driven, whereby more and more of that programs to produce the kind of talents that the industry needs is actually done by the industry. Of course, there are certain bureaucracy that we need to debottleneck and so on. So these are few structural reforms that are happening quietly behind the scene. Before I throw the questions to you and open the floor for discussion, let me point out a few things, a few opportunities. For the first time in so many years, there's a lot of interest internationally into Malaysia. And I think we will be able to sustain that economic goodwill for a while. And we will be able to attract investments and money into Malaysia. Our biggest challenge now, after we have been able to pitch a good storyline to the international community, is to realize that pitching. We've pitched Malaysia as the nerve center for energy transition in this region. On paper, it ticks all boxes. Geographically, in terms of natural resources, in terms of existing energy infrastructure, Malaysia beats everyone else in this region. So that has been able to attract some level of interest to see how Malaysia is going to pick up on that potential and eventually become a regional leader in energy transition. Number two, we have been getting a lot of global interest for our ability to lead AI. Now, okay, this is the bit that I think, if I were in your shoes, I might be extremely skeptical. The technical and technology gap between an economy that consumes AI-driven products and services and an economy that actually dictates AI is heaven and earth. And we have to admit that we are nowhere near of being able to create AI technologies ourselves. But we also have to be mindful that the interest, the global interest in Malaysia is not necessarily just about coming up with algorithms or LLMs. After all, that's, only a few companies in the world are able to do that with the kind of firepower they have. But Malaysia has an ecosystem that can house an economy that is driven by AI. It begins with the data center. Of course, now a lot of data centers come to Malaysia. 20, 30 years down the line, most probably when AI becomes so pervasive across every aspect of our life, I don't think any country can survive without a data center. Data center will be everywhere in the next 20, 30 years. Our choice now, given the head start that we have this early mover advantage. If we are among the first few countries in the world that begins the growth of data center, we should not stop by just housing the data center. Data center will go through various cycles. They have to upgrade their chips. Newer chips will come in. And with every new data center, that means that a new data center system has to be designed. So Malaysia fits this profile of a country that can offer a complete AI data center-based ecosystem all the way across the value chain. From housing the data center, to designing data center, to designing the chips, to manufacturing the chips, and all the ancillary products that come with the data center. In the future, one would imagine that as you have more countries having to build their own data centers, Malaysia would be one of the main players whereby people have to come here to get the data centers from us. Hang on. So we can transition from a country that begins with just housing data center to a country that provides data centers elsewhere. So these are all a few imaginations that we are putting into RMK 13. And since I'm losing my voice, I think it's a good time for me to pass the floor to you guys so that I can drink and try to get my voice back. So those are the blank canvas that we are drawing up for RMK 13. What we need now and what we hope to do better is that if that is the national ambition, the industry being the player, you know the nitty-gritty much better than us. You know where the fault lines are. You know which part of the ecosystem that needs to be strengthened. You know the kind of program designs that we have to put in place if we were to achieve this ambition. And for that, as Fairuz said, the repertoire is at the back. Take note of every single comment, good or bad, helpful or not, and then we go through every single one. Our interest is, of course, on the structure of the economy and the program design. When it comes to specific policies, especially the ones that is not within Kementerian Ekonomi's jurisdiction, we do include it in our discussion with the respective ministries. But lo and behold, the good thing is, when it comes to national planning, the overall responsibility for national planning that cuts across all sectors, all segments are consolidated at Kementerian Ekonomi, and that will allow us some leeway when we discuss and design policies that will be undertaken by other ministries as well. With that, thank you very much once again for your attendance, and I hope we'll have a very productive and constructive afternoon today. And I hope if we have the first question or the first view. Yeah, I was hoping that there wouldn't be any, but it's fine. Because then that means that we can go back and have a rest. Go ahead, yeah.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon, YB, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Uma Shankri Aruldas. I'm from the aerospace industry, currently working as the engineering manager in a private airline in Malaysia, and also a researcher under the United Nations of Office of Space and Affairs. So my question, or that would be my sharing in terms of young professionals' view, from someone who has been dreaming of aerospace, from someone who studied aerospace in Malaysia, USM Penang, with the challenges that we had, and fast forward to almost a decade after, I've seen lots of improvisation within the industry, also with the government collaboration and everything. Having said that, also on the other hand, I have seen that, like how Dr. Walu said, that we are having brain drains in terms of talents, and Malaysia is oftentimes seen as a beautiful retirement country. So my question would be, Malaysia has its own strengths with having our astronaut, and also we have our Malaysian Space Agency. We have a very well-established Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia as well. So having said all of this, what are the steps that we could take in order to make our strength to be sustainable and also reflected with government and also with the private players in order to keep it in a glory state in a sustainable manner? Thank you.
Perhaps I take 2 or 3 questions. I do need a few minutes to chew before I get my voice back. So the next question.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and good evening to everyone. Okay, Wabi Rafizi. My name Mona Lisa Mota, and my company is the name of my company is RM Global Marketing Malaysia Sdn Bhd. Okay, nak ucap tahniah pada YB Menteri as Menteri Ekonomi for the Madani government. But anyway, I came to your office, okay, a few times, and I did send a few letters for my company investment. My company, we managed to get the investment from China to Malaysia. But disappointednya, I don't receive any of your feedback or from the. Okay, Datuk TS, I agree with your presentation just now, but sometimes maybe my company is ongoing to be a giant company, but maybe you are not looking at my company in beginning. So I did invite from the Minister of Economy to come over and join our invitation to China for the industry. And I do agree with your point there. So because my company is looking towards, okay, in future for Malaysia, for the high-tech technology, which that we need to have that in Malaysia. Okay, I think I'm thankful to MITI, which really support my company. Professor Shamsur here, who support my company, giving the letter. And now the difficulty is I need the minister from the Ministry Economy to have the support to our company, to most of the, maybe a new player, to have at least to have awards from the Kementerian Ekonomi, any words, okay, whether you support us, come for a discussion or what. But there is none. So only the letter without any response. Jadi kecil hati lah juga. So it's not because there is no player. There is a player. But we need the support that at least to have the courtesy that what is we are doing for Malaysia, for this country. And another thing, it's so difficult to go and send a letter to your office, YB, because the police will say, do you have any appointment? So macam tak mesra. I memang tak minat macam tu. Because for us, as a private sector, we always move. Okay, sometimes we don't take our lunch, we don't know what time we take our dinner, we don't have our breakfast, because whatever in our mind is go for end result. To make it, everything must be success. So I hope in future or after this, please give us, if I said, because sometimes I need the officer. Today I can see a lot of officer from Ministry Ekonomi. Before this, I tak nampak pun, I nampak polis je. So I cannot discuss and talk about what is going on in my company for this industry, for this country. So tak tahu nak cakap macam mana. So but anyway, Madrid chairman, Datuk Riza, he welcomed our company and we discussed furthermore. We discussed with MITI, with TKSU, Alhamdulillah. MIDA, not really yet. But they did give a few of response. But I hope to be friendly, YB, for your Ministry of Economy ni more friendly so that we can move further and to achieve that. Dato' TS, you said that actually we are already here. But please support and look, whatever letter is there and we are coming to have the response, a positive response from the ministry side so that we can move further and advance. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe another question? Yeah. Well, maybe on the right-hand side.
Assalamualaikum dan selamat petang semua. Yang berbahagia YB Menteri dan juga Datuk Baruka Nur Azmi. Saya kenal Azhar bersara. I serve as a pilot in the Air Force for the last 30 years. And today I work with the UK company, BAE Systems, and I'm here representing British Malaysian Commercial Chamber. I like your word, that the YB mentioned that we need the right people for the right jobs. What we have done in UK, YB, we have what we call a simple institute. We call it ASK, Academy Skill of Knowledge, because in UK we produce a lot of aviation, from everything, and also maritime. So they have same problem that we are facing here. Not the right people from licensed technician and licensed aircraft engineer. So in this case, that this ASK will cater all sort of requirement. Simple example that we have A400M and we have Euroquote helicopter. So it needs specialists, well trained. So in the UK, so whether you are apprentice or you're taking diploma, ijazah, or you are already qualified engineer. So when you exit from this academy, you are you'll be graduated as, for example, maybe YB Rafizi Ramli, they just put the graduate qualified as a hydraulic engineer A400M, specific. So you work straight to any UK as the Air Force for a specific job. So this is kind of what they have done, because 15 years ago, they have the same challenge what we have here. And another thing that YB kalau saya boleh mention on sustaining the asset. We have a lot of asset in Malaysia, especially because I'm from AEROANGKASA and defense, where challenges of sustaining the asset is quite great. Why? Because first skill, through my experience. The second thing is a company, we need a local companies as ICP and to sustain the system. Good example is why be aware that we have jets that still flying until today, 33 years old, Hawk, small jets, nothing much, not that superior, but it's sustained until today, and it will phase out by 27 by Malaysian Air Force. And we have good offset program those days. We built CTRM, which produced a lot of components for Airbus and some and Boeing helicopter. So that is demanded by Malaysian government in 1992 to set up CTRM, and it's sustained until today. So what I'm trying to say is something that if you may consider, YB and your team, the direct offset that will sufficient for the industry, and talents will be sustained by like this kind of economy. I mean, MIAT have a great asset and revenue. It just be something at least and part of offset of the new asset. So we are here, my office in KL, YB, and I'm the only Malaysian working for BA Systems, and I'm proud to serve my country. Assalamualaikum, YB.
Salam. Okay, so maybe this question and then I'll answer the four.
Right, thank you. So good afternoon, sir. YB. Fantastic. I think we have heard so many from the aerospace industry. By the way, my name is Wilson, Global Component Asia. I'm also from the aerospace industry. So just to make it a little bit lighter than what my fellow brethren has shared just now. So this from the industry perspective, from the 90s where we are pretty much MRO-centric, to where we have grown leaps and bounds. Now we have teams actually fantastic in terms of manufacturing. In fact, I'll say that if our manufacturing capacity go down today in Malaysia, global supply chain for aircraft manufacturing is affected. So that's a big thing since that. That we also have a tremendous capacity in design and whatnot. In fact, we have a very good document, Aerospace Blueprint 2030. They actually look forward on where the seed industry in terms of global growth and forward projection and whatnot. But from the industry perspective, we've seen there's a gap between what the forward-looking for as an industry we're looking forward to and the administrative parts from supporting those growth-related, where we're still very stuck. It has almost like a feelings that, when you mention to the administrative, talking to the people, when they talk about aviation, they're still stuck with the MRO and mentally instead of going beyond that right now, it's manufacturing all those and design and whatnot. So the questions to thoughts from the economic minister and as well as the government agency is that we want to look forward beyond not where we used to be in the past. So there need to be a support from an administrative standpoint, where there's going to be a tax regulation, where there's going to be how we're going to address the HS code and all those and whatnot, have to be able to keep up pace with industry. Right? So just a question to the minister. Thank you.
I start with the easy one. First, yes, I fully agree. I think there's always a lag between not so much a policy aspiration, but translating that policy aspirations into rules, into regulation, into oversight. And that's one of the reasons why, it's unpopular, but the Ministry of Economy has pushed and succeeded in getting the government to commit to what basically is Red Tape Reduction Act, which Prime Minister has announced as Iltizam. We have about 60,000 regulations now, procedures, 60,000 procedures in government now. We have about 600 acts. Some of these acts have never been reviewed, let alone the regulations. And if you see from public sector's perspective, right? As government and society evolves and develops decades after decades, there'll be new things coming. And when new things begin to affect society, the economy, and then you have to regulate it, or you have to make sure that it grows in a certain way. So over the years, what we have, if we are not careful, and this is true for any country for that matter, what we have is that over time, the number of regulations and rules grow exponentially. And if the government doesn't have specific policy in order how to manage this growth of regulations and outdated regulations, we end up where we are today. And that's why, as of the last assessment, we work with MPC and the industry through Pemuda. We have about 60,000 regulations and 600 laws. So Cabinet has approved this so-called Anti-Red Tape Reduction Act, which PM wants it to be called Iltizam, so he has announced in the budget. What it is basically is to mandate government agencies and ministries to review and update regulations every 3 years. And this has to go to Parliament, because what doesn't get tracked, what doesn't get reported, doesn't get done. So governments commits that every 3 years we will go to Parliament and debate and submit the progress of cutting red tapes. That's number one. Number two is the rule that for every new regulation that comes in, you must take one out. Otherwise, the number of regulations will grow over time. So when this comes to force, and we plan to table it in Parliament in Q1 2025, it compels all agencies to review their regulations, and we hope, working across the board with all the government agencies and the industries, then we will be able to use this opportunity in the next 1 or 2 years to really align and push the efficiency of government's oversight and regulation. So the process from the top has started. Of course, you know, we have to go through that process sector by sector. But I'm hoping that with the Act to come in force next year, you know, the old days where someone did a rule in 1970s and successive ministers or government changes, and nobody bothers to go back and see what was done 20 years ago, and it remains in the statute book or in the regulation, that will be a thing of the past a few years down the line. And hopefully, because government has to present and to submit to Parliament every 3 years, it will keep our sets of regulations as agile as possible. And that is where I hope the industry will come in as well. Of course, we already have a platform, which is Pemuda, which is the highest level of public and private sector forum in order to harmonize rules and regulations. Even in the past, Pemuda's proceeding is usually about government, please do this and that, or please change this rule and so on. I hope with Iltizam coming to force next year, it elevates Pemuda so that you take a much higher perspective, working with government, not just to fight for what is good and easy for my industry, but to make sure that the rule and regulations are as agile and as constructive as possible to support the growth of all industries. So, you know, let's see how it goes from next year onwards. On Captain Azhar's and the young lady in the beginning about aeronautical, aerospace, I think all the industries in Malaysia went through that process. And all have the same pitfalls. Sometimes we are too comfortable and we become a victim of our own success. And this is where you know, the whole model has to be facilitated by government. It's natural in this country from the very beginning that government initiated the first catalytic move into an industry. EPU had done that many times in the past. If you look at the long-term planning, now EPU is Menteri Ekonomi, we look at the long-term planning, and the government decided that we must take a stake in that business. We need to start having a presence in there. So in the first few cycles of an industry, government takes a very significant stake in the business. And when that happens, usually it's either governments connect the dots together, or governments lower down the investment costs, fiscally or non-fiscally, or to some extent, more often than not, government prepares the ecosystem so that the nascent industry can grow. And that more or less, I think, the story of Malaysia in the last 40, 50 years. But what we have to be careful is that, and that's where I think we need to rethink of that model, there must be a clear graduation from one level to next level in terms of, the complexity of the industry and in terms of the value and technology content of the industry. And if we are not careful, if government provides too comfortable an ecosystem, then our industry never feels that they have to go and jump higher and start embedding themselves into the global supply chain and then work their way up in the global supply chain. So I think the aerospace industry began with something like that in the past. It started with national needs. It started with, as I think Captain Azhar mentioned just now, it started with our need to service our, fighter jets and so on. And then some companies started with supplying technical skills or spare parts. And then up to some point, it started with MRO, the need for MRO. We started having a larger fleet of public, commercial, non-commercial flights. And rather than sending these overseas, might as well do it here. My focus is to see how we can scale up that very good foundation so that these good companies that have all this while sustained locally because of the domestic market begin to jump higher and be either a regional or global player. And time is very opportune now because post-COVID, you are seeing, hang on. Because post-COVID, I think we will continue to see high demand for air travel. The backlog of commercial and non-commercial planes will continue to increase, and there is that shortfall now. I think a lot of our companies are inundated with a lot of global orders. My wish is that don't just use this upcycle, because any business, especially aerospace industry, has a very vicious cycle. It's about capacity building, and then there will be over capacity, and then things will lull for a while before it picks up again. What we need to make sure, and this is where I think I'm extremely open to any program design from the industry, especially the strategic ones. I have to admit, for example, Kementerian Ekonomi have focused a lot on especially three main industries, energy transition, and all the strategy interventions, for example, CCUS, that could not have taken place without government coming in, advanced electronic and semiconductors, rare earth, digital tech. These are all the ones that we really focus. Having specific ecosystem-wide initiatives in order to uproot the whole thing. We have not looked in details for aerospace, to be frank. So I'm very open, and I have to say at this stage, my knowledge of the aerospace industry in Malaysia is not as deep as what I've got involved with the other three sectors. But the process is similar, which is how do we uproot the whole ecosystem to prepare the industry to go beyond what has been provided all this while and to take opportunity of this upcycle in the aerospace industry. Part of it is already happening. I mentioned, Captain Azhar mentioned this now, we've provided a lot of money to make sure that industry now drives the upskilling. We've already debottlenecked in terms of qualification. We allow industries to take employees, even from among the school leavers, train them and give them certification, and that certification is recognized straight away without having to go through the rigmarole of bureaucracy of the past. So all that has been implemented in pilot stage, and in RMK 13, this is going to be made widespread across industry. But if we were to see a sustained growth of aerospace industry, I do concur that most probably it's something that we need to look much further in beyond what the government has done so far, because when we compare in terms of the complexity of the plan and the ambition of that government has for other industries, we haven't had something so all-encompassing for aerospace industry. Point Mona Lisa mentioned just now, I think you all heard, actually it's my instruction. I did not sit down with any private company. So it's not just yours, even the largest of the largest, because if I open the floodgate, what we will have is that any Tom, Dick, and Harry every day says, I have a business proposal. The Ministry of Economy's job is not to sit down and go through a private company's proposal. Simple. Whoever that is. Whether you are the MNCs or the largest, I don't. Because otherwise, it repeats the thing of the past. And my view is that, you see, if people have investors and they want to invest with government instruction that to facilitate any leads for investments, the door is open wide. What I want to avoid is people coming with a proposal and say that, you know, this proposal has the support of a minister or a ministry, and then it will go through and run the repeat of the past. My view is that a good company with a good idea, you should strike straight away. Unless there are structural limitation. If you want to do nuclear and you all have the money in the bank to do nuclear, but the law doesn't allow it, and you think that it is extremely important, then fine. What I do usually is I sit down with the industry group because it represents industry, not the interests of specific company and so on. So please don't blame my officers, and I hope you empathize with our situation. We do have tons of people queuing to see either the officers or the minister every day. And what I am very careful is this. We all know how it works in Malaysia. Sometimes all it takes is one photo with a minister to say that I have a very good relationship with the minister, so and so. Take that photo and go and see someone else and say, I can bring you to this minister and so on. That's something that I'm extremely, strict about. I have a case where someone appeared at my door, my office door, and claimed to be my wife's uncle. I never seen him. I don't know that my wife has an uncle like that. I actually had to chat with my wife and say, is this your uncle? And my wife said, that's not my uncle. So I hope you understand it's a lot more complicated for us in order to be fair to everyone. Otherwise, I think there's no point for us to change government if we repeat the thing of the past. If you have a good investor from China, by all means, bring them in, work with them, And I'm concerned if you have an investor, but you need the investor to see the minister. That's I tell straight away. And I think that message should go to everyone. You can try, but not so much my officers. Usually I decide my schedule myself. And most of my time, my schedule is blocked for government jobs, meetings, and then government programs and so on. And I think I can count less than 10 companies, and these are usually international investors. I mean, Amazon, you sit down with Amazon. You sit down with the largest VCs in the world, but usually I hardly ever sit down with any company privately, especially if the intention is to present something, you know. So, and I hope that message goes far and wide, because otherwise, you know, we will continue to have disappointed people that I can't see the minister. All the other, my advice is that for those who think that you have a very good business idea, and then there are either some restrictions or you have opinion, email to us. I do read emails. It's just that don't get pissed off if we don't come back to you. Because every proposal, and I think all the bahagian in Kementerian Ekonomi, we have a division for every sector. Every day they receive a lot of proposals. They have to go through the due diligence and then just get the sign off whether this is something that we should take up or not. So if you can imagine, you know, out of 10 proposals coming every day to an officer, most probably 9 is something that we have seen before, that we think that this doesn't require government intervention and this should, you know. And the reason, if I can share with a lot of you, if you ask, why when people send proposal, lepas tu sometimes division tak jawab. Because when kita jawab, it never ends. We say, no, thank you very much, this is already in action, please proceed. They will come back, yeah, but I tak puas hati, you know, my proposal is good, why you cakap no? Dia sambung. I actually reply in my first few months. I reply to every email and so on, and then after a while I say, you know, this is not going to end. Because when someone writes to you, they expect you to say, yes, I will support, I will give this endorsement and so on and so forth. Which, you know, frankly speaking, I don't know about other ministries, but Kementerian Ekonomi cannot do that. You know, likewise, when people write and say, I have this brilliant idea, I need 50 million from government. Even if I write, no, we can't provide you the money, my experience, after that, he will hound me for about 6 months. Why is it that you're not giving me 50 million? My idea will change the world. And so I hope you also see, you know, if you are in our shoes, you know, while, you know, we usually see from our perspective, one, Kementerian Ekonomi has to deal with thousands every month. And then we have to be able to sift through which ones are really fit, which ones that require government's intervention, which one is basically a private venture that should go on its own. More questions?
Good afternoon, White Ministry, and also everyone. My name is Chang. I'm from the Electrical Electronic Association Malaysia. Okay, so according to just how the minister mentioned about a lot of projects involved with the data center coming to Malaysia, right? So we believe, we also notice a lot of data center in Selangor and also in Johor. So what we under our member, we are the equipment supply. We have the manufacturer in terms of the energy sector, like the switchgear, cable, bus and so on. Right. So from this aspect, the data center, so they are bringing in is a complete system without using the local content. So this look like not benefit to our local industry. Right. So we want to know what is the government policy. So is it will be have the insist to ask those investment to come into Malaysia with the local content, more local content, so it can be benefit to the local industry. And if in Malaysia, I believe we have the law of tariffs, right? We can do a lot of season supply and installation. I think will be help to the local people to bring in our standard to empower with the international data center infrastructure.
Good afternoon. Okay, I'm Dr. Samanan. I think we heard from aerospace, electronic, and now automotive. I'm in the automotive industry for 34 years, maybe. I work in car company like Ford, Toyota, then I came to do my own business, and 21 years supplying to car companies now. So what I'm seeing now, the evolution of electrical vehicle. So earlier, like the days, I don't know, I find electric vehicle, once you mana engine hilang, gearbox hilang. It's talking about 17 components only for electric vehicle versus 300 components for combustion engine. So from here, this transition, we can see a lot of job loss going to happen. Like what we see recently, Nissan, cutting 9,000 jobs, I think, around the world. Volkswagen closed the plant. And where the shift is going now to China. So next week I'm going to China also. Have to play because they are the game changer now. How many of you are using electric vehicle? Just take them. We take some. One only.
It's a very bad reflection of Malaysia.
But 20, we're seeing this. It's good. One will be reversed by the time we go to 2030.
Yeah.
Like I really don't believe in electric vehicle, but in my age, 69, I'm born 69, but I have to change for that. So what I'm seeing, the vendors, as we are on the vendor, and now I'm talking seriously on the vendor part. So in the transition that we came, and what we're seeing for electrical vehicle, the component supply maybe just 17 components, so what we're going to have future. So what the government need to do, I think need to really on China, is the game changer now, and the electric the components of vehicles, like from electric vehicle, should have some calibration, tax incentive and all, to bring in China into Malaysia for the vehicles, components, calibration, business calibration. That's all.
Salam sejahtera, YB. I'm Ali Ghazali from Vast Consulting. I'm representing a Norwegian company in the, what we call non-solar, non-nuclear, renewable energy.
And that is?
What we call it kinetic power plant.
Anti-power plant?
Kinetic.
Oh, kinetic.
Kinetic,
oh.
yeah.
I thought anti-power plant.
So, we are deploying to the market all pilot project in Uzbekistan, Portugal, and I'm counting to have one pilot project here in Malaysia for 1 megawatt. Now, as far as government agency is concerned, it's not an issue. Whether it's regulation, things like that, it's not an issue at all. It's typical, like currently, factory have supply from TNB with a generator at the back. Can we reverse or not? Yes. We have this power plant that runs 24 hours, 1 megawatt, modular, and TNB at the back as a backup. That's one.
And it's very much wind or?
No. It's kinetic, let me say, it runs on gravity.
Gravity.
Yeah. In simplicity. Okay. Now, of course, being new, it's not easy. Yeah. I might, or hopefully in the next month or so, it could be a pilot by a private sector. Okay. But I'm looking at what the government has. One is, I think announced about a few weeks ago, National Energy Transition Facility Fund.
Yeah, it's under our ministry.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I'm just counting whether, maybe the government could do a pilot, 1 megawatt, and the offtake could be.
So we have to pay, yeah.
No.
Ah,
You contract with KKM.
Okay.
for their hospital. After all, they're paying energy to TNB anyway. Okay,
How much is 1 megawatt?
€4, 4 million
4
euro.
million euro.
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's something that it can be beaten lah. Or the other aspect under Petra, I met the deputy minister, yeah, on this, and I think under Petra there is the AAIBE, there is Tabung Amanah Industri Penjanaan Elektrik.
Kui. Kumpulan Wang Amanah Industri.
Yeah, but that one is restricted to IPP, utility, SEDA, ST, and MGTC. To which I asked, can a private sector work with this agency? But they must have, because I think that fund, you have to come up with the money first. So you need to be an agency with money lah, to get it going.
4 million euro.
Yeah, about 80, 90 million. That's EPCC right to COD. Yeah?
How does that, for 1 megawatt, how does that compare with solar
Okay.
in terms of cost?
Just in terms of numbers, yeah. Just I make a comparison with TNB. Yeah, a factory that runs 24 hours requiring 1 megawatt at 50 cents per kilowatt hour would mean that a day they pay 12,000 ringgit, right? So a month they pay 360,000. In a year, almost, what are we talking? Almost 5 million ringgit, right? So over 4-5 years, pay back. So I'm not sure. I mean, in terms of LCOE, US dollars, say over 21 years, is €4. That's not on volume, yeah. So currently, single buyer have got the they've got a quota, low carbon, non-solar, 400 megawatt, and apply less than 1 megawatt. And of course, for below 30 megawatt, the SMP is, 21, 22 cents lah. The interesting bit is the crest now. Minimum for 30 megawatt, it's a free market. Now this is a firm supply. Firm supply, hook on to the grid is 25 cents per kilowatt. So I understand from single buyer, now RE buyers are paying premium, like 65 cents to 70 cents. So if this technology can sell, the owner can sell at 40 cents, so it works. So, but the pilot, because being new, I met quite a number. Even a user, which a company that is 50% owned by MOF, they were excited, yeah. But being new, takut, yeah. So, so when I say government agency is a hospital, district cooling, yeah. The Petronas, if Petronas, you have so many, there are about 53 cogen licensed in Malaysia, yeah, and there are many users of easily, any user, any factory with space, because it requires some space, not as much as solar. You need about, say, 150 square feet for 1 megawatt, and it operates 24 hours, and overcome that, the energy trilemma. Yeah? That's all. Thank you.
So I tell you what, on energy, right? Over the last 2 years, government has debottlenecked a lot of regulations. The whole intention is to scale up installed capacity for renewable as soon as possible. So I think we have been very liberal when it comes, especially with CRES and so on. And we need this because otherwise we won't be able to manage our energy demand in the future. Never mind the fact that data center comes in. I think not many people are aware that we are already importing 30% of our gas needs for energy in the country. And when we retire coal, the first round 2032, and then there'll be another round in early 2040s, that will push the strain on gas even more at the time when Peninsular Malaysia no longer has enough gas to power the country. So if we are not careful and if we don't be very ambitious and creative in diversifying our energy mix, we will have to depend on gas imports in a generation. And I think at the moment a country depends on other countries for its energy needs, that changes everything. We've seen it in Europe, we've seen it everywhere else. So I think all the debottlenecking of regulations to facilitate upscaling of installed renewable capacity is done. To your question about the pilot and kinetic and so on, I have always been very agnostic when it comes to which is what, so long as the dollars and cents works. Presumably, the kinetic power plant require much less space than solar. And that's the problem with solar, because solar is restrictive when it comes to land requirements, unless we go on nationwide on rooftop, which we are doing. But even then, there's a limitation for government facilities, because most of government facilities basically are a few stories high and then limited rooftop. So I do see, from the simple logic that if we have an alternative power plant based on kinetic that require less land, that can provide up to 1 megawatt, which is more than enough for a facility, a government facility. It's just about the dollars and cents, which we will go through it, because we already allocate substantially for government facilities to begin converting to solar. So the same financing for government agencies to change to solar, if the dollars and cents is right, it means that it's parity. Whether you do solar has its restrictions because of the land that you require, or if you can do this and the total life cycle cost is comparable, then actually I'm more than happy to have a look at it. So we'll get in touch and we'll see, because 1 megawatt for kinetic gravity that is pendulum type is sorry, I'll Google. It's Norwegian. I'll Google. So then I think we are happy to have a look at it, because we are also pushing for government departments and government facilities to quickly swing from total reliance of the conventional electricity to a better mix. Second question on automotive industry, I fully agree. I don't think you can avert it any way you want. It's going to be, and in the case of Malaysia, the moment lower value EV cars are allowed, and I think most probably that's going to happen in 2026, 2027. Currently, EVs are all big model and more expensive, 120,000 and above. I think there's some decision making, that we have to take in order to to hold off a smaller EV car coming into the market. But most probably 2026, 2027, the smaller EV cars of 60 to 80,000 will hit the market. And the moment that happens, when consumers realize that it's cheaper to power an EV compared to the gasoline, then you will start seeing EV taking over ICE quite quickly. And whether government does anything about it or not, whether the industry wants to accept it or not, it is going to happen. So what government is focusing now is to really make sure that the charging facility will pick up as the anticipated demand picks up. But also, as you point out, is to quickly build the whole automotive value chain and ecosystem across it. Geely is building its automotive city in Tanjung Malim, and that's part of the plan. What I feel that the relevant and when it comes to automotive, it's mostly meaty. What we need to make sure is that the existing supply chain from the ICE quickly have a pathway for them to how to slot into the EV value chain. And that's also one of the reasons why the government is adamant not allowing exports of raw rare earth elements. All over the country, states feel that they will be Wakanda very soon. They have about 40 trillion worth of rare earth elements here and there. Everyone thinks like that. It's extremely unpopular because we block export. The reason being is that if we allow the exports now, within 3 or 4 years, all these will be exported as raw carbonates. And what we need is to build the downstream industry in Malaysia, because if EV is coming, building a very large battery industry in Malaysia is important, and building around the automotive industry. But for that to happen, that means that we need to have a downstream processing and separation plant in Malaysia, which for the time being, only China has that technology. So that's something that government is really focusing. I'm very confident that in the next 1 or 2 years, we will see big breaks in rare earth elements when we are able to put that downstream plant locally, and then we will be able to attract a lot of EV battery manufacturers coming to Malaysia. So then we will be able to replicate the whole value chain and transposing from ICE-based automotive supply chain into an EV-based supply chain. So my view and opinion to the automotive industry is that it's going to happen. And time is quite short, 2 to 3 years. So it's very important. And what government can do is perhaps to go down and perhaps share the whole game plan. The game plan is there, and the components is being put together. Our difficulty is that certain things we need to score some points here and there first in order to bring them in. We need to get the technology, but I think once the key components are in place, then I'm hoping that the existing supply chain of ICE-based automotive industry can be transposed very quickly into EV-based. But yeah, in 2026, and I think we are on track. We are on track. Perhaps what has not been communicated too well so far is bridging that knowledge gap between what government has in plan and how to bring in the industry very quickly into that value chain. First question about data center and the equipments and so on. I totally agree. That's exactly government's view as well. So at this stage, instruction, the government policy now is that we begin to differentiate between data center investments that bring in AI capability and your normal data centers. When MITI approves an investment, there is already some requirements on local content and local hiring and so on. What we need to do, and that's where I'm hoping in the next 1 or 2 months we will be able to make some, really big announcement, is that it's a chicken and egg before we can impose on what kind of local content that is required. Because the whole nature of data center industry is that it begins with the ODM. You know, the original design manufacturer will basically design everything, and then where you source, what spec, and so on is actually based on the ODM on the rack. We don't very much have ODM now. So the focus is to very quickly create a few ODM in the country, local ODM. Once we already have local ODM, and then local ODM can only do that if they are connected with a chip supplier. You know, and for the time being, you know, NVIDIA, for example, controls GPUs. So these are all the ecosystem that are put together. Give it about 1 or 2 months, you will hear the announcement. And the whole idea is this. The moment we create a few local players and beginning at the ODM, and the ODM will be able to put together everything because they have a direct support from chip manufacturer, then it means that every time a data center decides to open in Malaysia, then they have a choice, an option, whether they use ODM from elsewhere or they use Malaysian ODM. And I think that will create the kind of ecosystem that we require. A Malaysian ODM most probably will source from Malaysia. And I think once we have that level of participation in the ecosystem, then it makes it a lot easier for government to decide on local content. Because otherwise it's chicken and egg. If we say that, you know, you must have 30-40% local content, and then the investor will come in here, but I have no choice because, you know, okay lah, I can take rak besi sikit, atap sikit, and so on, but the rest, the chips, the rack, everything, I have to take from overseas, you know. So it becomes, that's the situation now. We want to move up from there, where government, if we have a local ODM and ecosystem with a few major players in ODM, then, you know, then Malaysian players can work with the local ODM to create the whole rack and so on. And then it's quite easy for us to deal with new investments because it's not like they can give that excuse. We have ODM, you can take lock, stock, and barrel. And in the future, as the existing data centers goes through its basically upgrade cycle, they can always switch to ODM. And likewise, as more and more countries need to have their own data center, we hope to be able to become one of the global players that supplies the whole complete solution for a data center. And I think we are on track. The timeline that we put for ourselves is in the next 5 years. So I'm hoping that in the next 5 years, Malaysian designed data centers will not only be deployed in Malaysia, but begin to be deployed in the region and anywhere else in the world. I'm quite cocky, confident saying it because we have worked on it. It's just waiting for some announcements. So, next round. Yeah. A lot of questions on the left. The right side usually are very happy.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ken Wei. I'm from automotive industry, speaking on behalf of my company, Sono Group, which is specialized in commercial vehicles and also right now also process in EVs for commercial vehicles. So my first question will be what is the national plan in electrifying using the EV commercial vehicles?
Sorry, in what? In electrifying?
Yeah, electrifying using EV commercial vehicles.
Commercial vehicle.
Yes. Second question, will government consider to exempt the sales tax because the EV commercial vehicles will actually has more emission than normal passenger car? This is the second question. So for the third...
Sorry, the second question, is government ready to give sales tax exemption
Yes, correct.
for EV commercial
Vehicles,
vehicles?
yes.
Because in terms of emission, that is much more economical than a normal EV car. Is that? Yeah.
Yes. Also to helping the business like or the GLC to have a, how to say, to encouragement in ESG more compared to normal civilian. Okay, another third question will be the certification for EV technicians. This one will suggest government to have a look at the shoulder of the giant. We can learn from China there to look what is their certification and encourage the communication from both sides. So another will be, actually this one will be more to my personal side regarding on what you said earlier regarding on the talents. So this one, speaking for young people, actually we have a lot of talents, but problem is when you look at the job street there or any job seeking website, and for example like engineers, doctors or other professionals, actually our starting salary is quite slow, quite low. In order to encourage them, other talents to join in all this rapid growing industry, first you must have this enough, how to say, the stimulates for them to join more, so that you can get more talents from, I would say, first like overseas. So another will be also speaking on what you say, the solar panels just now regarding on the 30% the combustion gas. This one, I will say that, for example, like the solar panels, if I want to install the solar panels, the cost actually is quite high, 20 or 30K or 40K, but my comeback period is quite low. And what I saw is that there is no government policy to help a normal person to adapt to solar panels. For example, like the NEM is not really encourage people to do that. So another will be more to like what you say, the data center, the concern about the cybersecurity. Actually, I'm also a certified network defender from EC Council. And recently, actually, I'm also quite surprised because I also facing an CC fraud on September. So if I also facing this kind of fraud, how about the old people? So this is my question. Thank you.
There's actually 7 questions. Maybe we say another person that will add that to 10 questions to answer.
Assalamualaikum, Wabi. Shahiman from Turkish Aerospace. I'm here not to ask questions, but more to give feedbacks for RMK preparation. First of all, I would like to request for the focus, the perspective to be put Malaysia as a producer instead of as a user. Oftentimes we see when it comes to implementation, Malaysia is always a user of someone else's products. As a result, we manufacture for someone else, we use, and then, as manufacturing industries, the margin that manufacturing keep. So that translates into all those salary that, that's not competitive for the past 20 years, 30 years, and so on and so forth. Second thing is, I like the keywords you mentioned about ODM. Those are moving towards from user to producer, transitioning through. One thing that I've seen lacking, I came from semiconductor industries, now I'm with aerospace industries. One thing we see lacking is the driver. And driver comes in multiple angles. When I say that, what I mean is there are sometimes drivers, there are agencies entrusted to drive, but I see some issues with the structural for the agencies. For example, the agencies are created as a company limited by guarantee. So after 5 years, they're expected to sustain. So what ended up happening was, instead of driving government agenda to grow certain industries, They are thinking about, okay, how am I going to survive in the next 5 years? I'm going to do business for myself. So, there's some structural thing that needs to be looked at from that perspective. Because when I've seen semiconductor, I'm seeing aerospace, similar things happening. And manufacturing, when we say produce and design, there's a lot of talks about semiconductor doing design now. The main question to us is, what kind of products does Malaysia export? Because you can design for someone else, where is the PO realized? Is the PO realized in Malaysia for that product, or is the PO realized outside of Malaysia? If the PO is not realized inside Malaysia, what ended up happening in Malaysia is the margin that Malaysia keeps is going to be very small. For example, what we do in Turkish Aerospace Malaysia, we're an aerospace company. We design computers for aircraft, avionics. So everything is designed from scratch. We design, manufacture, 80% of our suppliers are from Malaysia. So when any of our aircrafts in Ankara needs to be delivered to any customers within the world, the PO for that avionics actually come to Malaysia. So the whole 100% margin is kept here, which translates to the suppliers. And what I see in aerospace is coming down to aerospace. We've seen Malaysia Aerospace Industry Blueprint. Is a great blueprint. The analogy to that blueprint is IMP3. IMP3 has a clear vision going from manufacturing into eventually becoming a system, microsystem nation. Well, I guess along the way it was dropped. So MAIB has that plan. But execution-wise, I believe, in my opinion, we are so much in the comfort zone where the focus is still on manufacturing MRO. I remember having this industry dialogue session with Topa. Back then, I was the chairman for Malaysia IC Design Association. We normally have an annual industry minister dialogue session. We mentioned about this. When you do manufacturing, one day, there will be a company, a nation that's going to be cheaper than you. So as far as the company is doing, let's say even for aerospace companies, for Turkish Aerospace, we do aircraft manufacturing here. But it's a cost game. It's a very cost game. So whoever can do the cheapest. One day, if let's say the whole ecosystem from design to manufacturing is here, it's harder for the company to move. But if the ecosystem that's only available in Malaysia is just manufacturing, then MNCs outside will plan for that transition to happen. One day, they're going to move to another country. So that's what happened to Intel. We know 5 plants was closed in Kulim. So that's more of going from a user of technology to producer of technology and real producer of technology. Second thing is the driver is really required. Structural reform for the driver is needed. And identify the gap. When I say identify the gap, let's say you want to do aerospace, you want to go into higher value chain, you want to produce products, or even semiconductor, you want to produce products. Identify who are the players from raw materials to design to manufacturing, all the way through until product shipment goes out. That is critical because that will allow the driver to plan what's next. Where is the gap, or what kind of industry I have to produce next in Malaysia or to make available in Malaysia. That could be in the form of DDI or joint venture with external company. Then why that is important, because you mentioned about talent development, demand-driven talent development. The way it's being executed right now, yes, companies and agencies are coming to see us, to see, like for us to talk to manufacturing companies about talent requirement for the next 5-10 years. We will provide our feedbacks. What about those industries that's still not present in Malaysia? So those are not being heard. As a result, the talent projection, the talent planning is missing that industry gap. So I guess that's my input for today. Thanks.
So I think let me try to answer jampu semua kan. Yeah, I think in all government blueprints nowadays, the intention to change from a manufacturing nation to a nation that creates is very evident. I mean, we keep seeing this from made in Malaysia to made by Malaysia type of thinking. Of course, it's easier said than done. But we do have a few opportunities. Just to take example, you mentioned about chip design. We don't have many IC design companies in Malaysia now. I think less than 10. They survive mostly by designing for others around the world. A lot of these large companies, to have their in-house IC designers is not their core business. So what they do is that once you reach a certain reputation, you will get orders and POs from other companies. So that's the current stage now. But we have two, at least, immediate opportunities that we need to capture in order to step change, especially in our IC design. First is the data centers explosion that I mentioned. There's a whole lot of opportunities coming out of it. But the larger one that takes perhaps some years to come, but require a lot of planning now, is the fact that ASEAN now is already 5th or 4th largest economies in the world. In 10 to 15 years' time, it's certainly 4th and most probably can even become 3rd largest economies in the world. This is almost a billion market, a billion people market. And in terms of growth, ASEAN outperforms except India or China, maybe. It outperforms anywhere else. So ASEAN is going to be a very vibrant consumer market in the next 10 to 15 years. The kind of things that happened with China in the last 30 years and is now expected to happen with India, ASEAN is more or less there. But of course, a lot of people don't, especially in Malaysia, a lot of us don't see it yet. So what happened in China? I think a lot of investors around the world, when we were in school, when we were kids, already saw that if you have a 1 billion population, such a huge market, and with that kind of economic growth, there comes a point when the middle class gets larger, the buying power gets stronger, and therefore it changes into a consumer market. And the moment it becomes a consumer market, you are looking at implosion of demands for electronics, gadgets, cars, everything under the sun. That's the story of China. It's perhaps at different scale is happening in India, but quietly, I think globally, people around the world understand that the next phenomenon is actually ASEAN. This is where it is very important for our industry to step change from the current situation where we design for other people and eventually, hopefully, where we create electronics goods for consumer markets ourselves. For the time being, all these years, we are just a manufacturing warehouse. And that's where we want to reflect the overhaul of the business model in RMK 13 onwards. If in the past, we welcome huge MNCs investments because they put a lot of money, they create a lot of manufacturing space, and then they produce something that is designed elsewhere, packed elsewhere, and used elsewhere. But as you point out, that economic model has a shelf life. We now have the opportunity to redo the whole ecosystem. One part of it, I think we are doing okay, which is in terms of focusing on designing chips and moving to higher value. What I think we need to really put our brains together for the next 10, 15 years is to see whether, as and when ASEAN reaches the kind of economic zenith that we would have 10, 15 years down the line as a large consumer market, whether or not Malaysian electronics goods can actually take a very strong position here. Because that's what happens with China. As they implode in terms of demand, in the beginning, yes, it was driven by Western products, but it was very quick that their own products come on stream. Their electronics, their EVs, everything, even their tech, their platform, started to take shape, and now it's sustained. We have that opportunity in the next 15 years, but of course, the gap is very big. And that's why RMK 13 is designed not just for the next 5 years, but it's actually for the next 15 years, because we know there are two milestones that might happen within this time span. First, by 2028, it is expected that Malaysia will become a high income nation, which means officially we are a developed country. So, you know, it takes a lot of rewiring for us to behave and sustain as a developed country. And then by 2040, there is a likelihood that ASEAN will achieve that potential as an economic consumption powerhouse, the top 3, top 4 in the world. And that's where, if we plan properly and if intervene properly, then hopefully we will have our own products to circulate within ASEAN. Otherwise, you know, we will prolong the story of we buy, we just manufacture certain things, it got designed elsewhere, got sent elsewhere, put together, and then send it back for us to consume here. I do agree in terms of the need to re-look at all the agencies and the governance and so on, you know. There's always a concern that government interventions, either by way of agencies or even to a certain extent by way of JLCs, you know. If you're not careful, you crowd out. You know, you cannibalize and crowd out. That process is ongoing now. The Chief Secretary, Ketua Sesi Negara, heads a special task force to go through all the agencies and see which one should be there, which one should not be there, and so on, and go through all the structural reforms and mapping. I just hope that you know, appreciate that it's a tedious process, but that decision has been done quietly in government, just to right-size the whole agencies and go back to its mandate and so on. Also, when it comes to JLC, I think the instruction is to audit and beginning with the audit of JLCs as well. Because I think once you start the audit, apart from governance and financial performance, you can't run away from making a hypothesis about whether or not this adds value or that doesn't add value and so on. So the structural reforms of government agencies, of government's involvement through JLCs is now being done with the sole purpose of making sure that it's supposed to be there to facilitate, not to hamper or not to crowd out, you know. I don't know how long it will take. I would imagine auditing 2,000 JLCs will take some time. Likewise, going through all the CLBGs in government, all the agencies, will take some time. But these are the kind of quiet reforms that are taking place in order to streamline everything, so that we do believe that the country moves faster when the private sector takes the lead. That's my personal belief. The private sector knows a lot more about how to create value. And that's why sometimes I sound a bit, you know, kasar when I feel like there's too much dependence of private sector on government. Because our belief is that private sector knows how to drive value much faster. We need to make sure that government facilitates, not to hamper, and will do our best in what is within our purview, to make sure the regulations, the resources, the catalytic first move, yes, government has to do. But beyond that, usually the industry will be able to pick up much better. There's about 7 questions from the gentleman before. Let me start with on the low salary, I know it depends on who you talk. You talk to, and I was an employer myself once, and anyone who has to carry a payroll every month, is a pain in the neck, carrying a payroll. I remember while I cherish my freedom to run my own company, I hate the middle of the month. Because I realized, okay, great, now I have to prepare for the payroll within a week's time, the cash flow and so on. If you talk to the employer will always say that, we would like to pay very high as best as possible, but we have 2 problems. Number one, if we were to pay that high, we close shop, because actually cash flow-wise, value-wise, that kind of high salary doesn't really support our business now as much as we would like to do it. Of course, some employers are so kasar lah. They will say that, you're not productive, I'm not paying you. It has to be productivity linked and so on. But I do empathize. Usually, I don't think employers want to victimize employees. Happy employees will make the bosses happy. So you do want to pay as high as possible, but it's also a function of dollars and cents, of the cash flow and the profit and loss. So that's usually one problem lah. The second problem, employer will also say this. Actually, we are more than willing to pay 5,000, 6,000, but we don't have the candidate. And the kind of candidate who comes and expect to be paid 5,000, 6,000 actually cannot do the job. That's employer's perspective. Employee's perspective, job seekers will say, is like, I have a qualification, I've tried, I shouldn't be expected to know everything. You can't compare me with someone who has worked for 10 years. And if this continues, I will never get trained and I will never skill up. And then to pay 2,000 ringgit, 2,200 ringgit for a starting salary for a fresh graduate in, say, mechanical engineering, that's so unfair. Because that was the starting salary 15 years ago. And then one will say that, I've tried 20, 30 job applications, I don't even get called for anything. The reality is, I think, is in the middle. When we look at the macro perspective, there are a few recognitions that we all have to accept. Number one, there is a mismatch in terms of talent and in terms of requirements. On the one hand, I think at any one point we have about 300,000 graduate job seekers. On the other hand, jobs that require graduates at that high level, there's only about 60,000. So there's about 240,000, okay. Then you drill down further and it's like, okay, how is that be? Because then the simplistic view of that 300,000 graduate job seekers versus 60,000 available vacancies, the simplistic diagnosis is that we are not creating enough high-paying jobs for the graduates, and therefore they have to do they are underemployed. But when you drill down further, actually, for the jobs that we really need, we don't have enough people. We don't have enough people in certain segments. For example, now the ones that are really in high demand, software engineers, data scientists, to a certain extent, some specific engineers, mechanical, especially software and electronic engineers, these ones are not there, kan? Then they're just not enough, kan? But the ones yang underemployed ini are perhaps a lot more generalist. So there is a mismatch, you know. So I talk to vice chancellors, and vice chancellors tell me that, okay, YB, you need to make sure that you streamline from the top to make sure even the composition and intake at the universities, engineering faculty must reflect the demand in the market. Because if you leave it to students, they tend, every year there's an oversized application for civil engineering. But it's a very much less for other disciplines, for electrical, for software, you know. So basically, these are a problem that basically exists in our society at large. So the key underlying issue is actually mismatch. And the mismatch, until we close the gap, obviously will cause this swing in salary. I have a fresh graduate doing something else who went through a boot camp in data science who expect to be paid 6,000 ringgit after graduating because he thinks that I can do data science and therefore data scientists, fresh graduates should be paid 6,000 ringgit. The reason there is something like that is because of the mismatch. When it comes to some professions, it's very much job seekers market. I'm sure in electronics and some, it's very much, and poaching is very rampant because there are too few of them and the growth is very high. But in other segments, is employers market. If someone comes and say, I blah, 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 and say, you know, there are about 10 other people, I can easily choose any one of them, you know. So that mismatch is very rampant in our industry. So while we do the structural change, either in terms of supply policy at the university, at the institutions, either we do demand policy in terms of, you know, what the companies, better data and so on. The stopgap measure now is to allow for upskilling as fast as possible. And a lot of this mismatch can be closed by upskilling. And that's what government is trying to do very quickly. That's what I mentioned as well. It's very important to take industry on board so that industry, with the support of government, train these people, get rewarded, employ them, hire them, because if we are waiting for the mismatch to be sorted out at the supply from policy level, you know, the inertia is so great, it will take some time. And of course, there's also macro economic policy that we put in, you know, unpopular, but the minimum wage has to go up and it has to be complemented with progressive wage so that progressively year after year, while we sort out all this mismatch, we also push for the higher salary band. I can share at least the macro number for the last 1 year does show a much healthier growth wage. So as this happens, but I also understand, that's why, you know, I'm very unpopular with the job seekers because they think I speak for the capitalists. I don't believe in imposing and paksa people to pay and decide for every grade if I get this, because if you run your business, you know that I would like to pay as much as possible, but not to the point that my company will go bungkus. So it has to come hand in hand with the value creation. Is that part of value creation that you know, we have a lot to do to make sure that as the economy grows, government focuses on some high value industries, and eventually, hopefully 2-3 years down the line, the mismatch gap will be closed. On the question on commercial EV, the government's decision is very much to create the industry here. So it's extremely encouraged, but I think this is also a lot of the complaints that I hear from the industry. Industry wants to bring The first few EV commercial vehicles, they find it very difficult. Government feels that, okay, I want you to bring the whole industry here, assemble it here. Industry will say, yeah, but if I can't bring the first 5, how am I going to convince the whole industry to come here? That's something that I think we will have to look on progressively. But just in the same way that EV for private vehicles is here to stay, likewise, I think not just EV for commercial, I think hydrogen for long haulage is eventually will pick up as well. So it's in government policy, government encourage it, but the program design and the nitty-gritty, the problem is this. For every 10 genuine EV commercial vehicles that want to come in, most probably there will be 30 that are not genuine. So for MITI and for the government to really design the plan to make sure that those people who are allowed to bring and operate commercial EV, they are really genuine and have the proper plans to go to the next step of assembling commercial EV here. That bit is still, I suppose, work in progress at the government level. The rest, I think, what else? Did I miss anything substantial from that 7 questions? The one who asked, tadi dah lupa dah. Tak ada, dia happy. So dia happy is okay. I don't know, maybe we have last question. Tapi ada kat belakang hujung sana. You have to jump to here. Okay, 1 question and then 1 last question. Right. So the last, suddenly jadi 4. Okay, 1 question and 4 last questions.
Yep, sorry, I have to take up some of your questions.
Yeah.
This is not so much about question, but more of a wish list. The problem about mismatch about industry and then what's coming out from the university, higher institution, whatnot, that will not resolve anytime soon. So one wish list that I can put forward as on behalf of the industry, it can be from aerospace or electronic. For RMK 13 is that to have a training co-sharing in terms of cost development between the industry and the government. The cost of training is very expensive. So as much as the company would like to train people, sometimes we want to make sure that we get good people that create value generation. Typically, it's the first 5 years of a career of a person, fresh grad, and the first 5 years gaining experience where the lowest pay is low. So with that weight supplements that we can work with government and whatnot, so we can churn our side to train more people. Those as good, we retain them. That create where the company can retain them. Those as not, perhaps they have gained that skill set, we train them, they can go where else. And where the government will gain is that first you have a lower unemployment. Second part is that if the person managed to go through the first 5 years, once they go out somewhere else, they will start to have their pay jumps along the way. So government will gain back from the income tax and whatnot. So it's only the initial first couple of years, that's where eventually both sides will win-win. So just a wish list and thought.
There's some level of that kind of design, but of course it's, we are very careful about the program design because successive government programs in the past on rewarding employer to retrain and claim from government eventually ada 50-50, 50% scam, 50% yang betul. So that I can share with you, I didn't see it that way either until I come in and start seeing. Administering it for 10 companies is okay. Administering it for 20,000 companies, then unfortunately our culture ni ada je yang nakal, kan? Dan the ones yang cari loophole and then eventually it's just dia ambil isi, claim. Tapi actually the ones that churn out to, God knows what lah kan. So I think that policy is still in place. What is being fine-tuned is that how exactly do we want to balance between the governance, the outcome, dengan the objective. Because previous experience kadang-kadang highlight some loopholes that we need to look at. But I'm fully on board with you on that. Second question.
Assalamualaikum, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat petang, saya Helmi daripada Malaysia Thailand Business Council. Sawadee krap. I'm not apa ni speaking Thai apa ni today lah. So
You
bahasa
better
Malaysia.
be, I won't understand, I won't answer.
Okay. Sebab kita pun tak ada translator ini. Pertamanya terpanggil ada 3 soalan yang saya nak sampaikan hasrat kepada Yang Berhormat Menteri dan juga KSU. Pertamanya, Malaysia Thailand Business Council adalah G2G di bawah MITI yang berurusan dengan semua player. Dan kita pun ada counterpart di Thailand, Thailand Malaysia Business Council. My chairman also, myself just came back from Bangkok. We had annual meeting dengan our counterpart. So kita find out more interesting bilateral economies between Thai dengan juga Malaysia, Malaysia dengan Thai. Soalan yang pertama berkenaan dengan RMK 13. Bolehkah Yang Berhormat Menteri boleh share dari segi output ataupun impact kesan daripada RMK 12? Kesan kepada pemain industri terhadap ongoing RMK 13. Itu soalan pertama. Yang kedua adalah dari segi limpahan ekonomi, cross border investment. Yang Berhormat Menteri KSU boleh nampak peta Malaysia di belakang tu, sepadan Malaysia Thailand. So kita pun dah buat engagements dengan kerajaan negeri, Perlis, Kedah, Perak, Kelantan dan akan datang adalah Sabah dan Sarawak. So kita melihat dari segi limpahan ekonomi di cross border investment ataupun border area antara Malaysia dengan Thailand, dan melihat kepada peluang limpahan ekonomi yang pihak negara Thai interested to look into dalam dalam limpahan ekonomi. Soalan yang kedua ni saya nak sentuh juga dari segi dapatan kami adalah yang pertamanya tu ketidakserasian. Mungkin budaya ni dah lama antara pemain industri, kerajaan negeri dan juga kerajaan persekutuan. Dari segi projek-projek high impact, projek lebih kepada projek manfaat rakyat. So kita tengok dari segi pemain industri ni berada di tengah-tengah. Dari segi apa peluang limpahan yang boleh didapati daripada kerajaan persekutuan dan juga kerajaan negeri. Sebab bila kita tengok dari segi agensi di bawah kerajaan negeri nak juga projek dia di peringkat negeri. Dan kita lihat kerajaan persekutuan melalui daripada pembangunan wilayah. NCER ada projek dia. Okay. ECR ada projek dia. Lepas tu Rekoda and also SDC ada projek masing-masing. So bagaimanakah dari segi integrasi dari segi pemain industri melalui Dewan Perniagaan ni boleh bersama-sama dengan kerajaan negeri dan kerajaan persekutuan. Dan last sekali adalah limpahan ekonomi daripada sumber yang sedia ada di peringkat negeri ini, apakah manfaat kepada rakyat setempat. Saya kena memujilah Yang Berhormat Menteri sebab projek rintis yang dipanggil Intan so Intan tu saya nampak berjaya walaupun Yang Berhormat selalu bercolotir dalam TikTok. Bila TikTok saja, okay, that means projek sili menjadi. So that's apa happen. Itu yang pada saya dari segi output yang kita rasakan rakyat nak dalam jangka masa pendek. So kita tengok dari segi satu, adakah limpahan ekonomi ini boleh memberi manfaat untuk RMK 13, dan last yang untuk soalan yang ketiga ni adalah adakah dari segi sistem yang saya dipahamkan yang tahun-tahun lepas, adakah sistem skim latihan slim dulu tu dipraktikkan dalam semua kontrak-kontrak kerajaan yang membolehkan penempatan belia, penempatan graduan dibayar dan dimasukkan dalam skim kontrak kerajaan. Adakah itu diteruskan? Itu saja Yang Berhormat. Terima kasih.
Let me answer dulu. Slim masih lagi tak ada dah, requirement tu dah tak ada dalam kontrak. Requirement tu dah tak ada. Soalan pertama tentang pencapaian dan kesan RMK 12 kepada RMK 13 kan. I think there are two levels lah when we look at something like 5-year plan. So if we look at RMK 12, in terms of the macro hard targets, actually is quite on track in terms of the average annual growth and so on, you know, and given that 2021, 2022 there was COVID, so it was not too far off. Of course, different indicators have different achievement. I think we will have a challenge to hit 40% CE, compensation to employee ratio. The target for RMK 12 by end of 2025 is that it has to be 40% out of GDP. I think the highest we may hit is about 34% maybe by the end of 2025. Of course, in terms of spending target, no problem lah. It was planned for 400 billion spending target, and then we will most probably achieve that without any problem. But that's the bit that I say in the beginning. I think it has to be two-layer assessments, and it depends on which lens you look at it. All in all, I think a lot of what the government set out in terms of hard targets for RMK 12, I don't think we had a big miss. It's on track and so on. But what we may not achieve well, or what we perhaps could have capitalized better, is the opportunity to leapfrog to the next value chain. So if I were to ask the question, after 5-year plan, RMK 12, 2021 to 2025, give and take that COVID that happened, had we radically restructured our economy as per the aspiration of RMK 12? I don't think we have, to be frank. I don't think we have. So the structure and the challenges of the economy, the middle income trap that we had at the end of RMK 11 by 2020 actually permeates all the way until today. That's why we're still talking about it into RMK 13. So I think quantitatively, I think RMK 12 did not veer too far off from the targets. But qualitatively, that's why a lot of what we wanted to do in RMK 13 is to address those qualitative structural issues, so that by the time we go into 2031, we can look back and say that the economy and society had radically shifted or improved or restructured compared to the starting point in 2025. I don't think we can say that now about RMK 12 when compared to 2020. In terms of border development, the state agencies, the federal agencies, some of it are under our ministry. The corridor development authorities are under our ministry. At the end of the day, the request for budget will still come to Kementerian Ekonomi. Because, of course, for all these states, you have the Perbadanan Kemajuan Ekonomi Negeri, SEDC, State Economic Development Corporation. So they want to do this and that. But except for Johor and Selangor, all the other SEDCs in Semenanjung actually do not have enough money to run the projects on their own. So they will submit the request for budget all the way back to Kementerian Ekonomi. So what we do is that we want to make sure that we streamline, and we do streamline from the last 2 years. So we avoid duplications. We want to make sure that it's not ticking the box type of projects, Just build 5 gerai somewhere 5 kilometers daripada sempadan and call it project pembangunan sempadan, that kind of things. The stage of evaluation for border development in the north is at the due diligence stage now. We've done a pre-feasibility study because we've done one with Singapore in the south. We have Johor Singapore Special Economic Zone. inshallah will be signed by the two prime ministers within a month's time. So the whole concept, the whole ecosystem and value expected from that border development and border synergies hopefully will be realized. We have to go through the same process for the northern border development with Thai, and we have to quantify what is the economic value. We have to qualitatively assess how we're going to benefit, and it's not apple to apple with Johor and Singapore economic zone, but it's part and parcel of the discussion. The Thai side is also quite keen about it, but we want to make sure that if government were to commit and develop a plan, it is something that really creates value. Otherwise, it's just another launch and then 5 years down the line, we go back to square one. But independent of this, there has been a lot of development, especially within Perlis, the Perlis Inland Port, dekat Chuping Valley and so on. A lot of that is already happening. And we just need to, of course, a lot worse, a lot more difficult to plan for the Kelantan side. It's a lot easier to plan for the Perlis side. Partly because of the connectivity is better in terms of rail and so on. And there's also the port, Kuala Sanglang port and so on the part of Perlis. So if the question is, how do all these plans translate to the well-being of the rakyat, at Kementerian Ekonomi, when we do all sorts of plans, the national plans to RMK, we also do sectoral plans, we do capital planning every year for the budget. First and foremost is about job creation, more than anything else. So even when we design something like Intan, we didn't design it as a cash handout program. It is a poverty eradication program with creating employment in mind, because only with employment then you can sustain the value creation. And the big challenge in terms of disparity of different regions in terms of economic development is mostly about job creation. It's very difficult to get industries to go to hinterlands of Kelantan, Terengganu, parts of Sabah or Kedah. So government has to go in and find an economically viable project that can create jobs and then can employ people. So we try our best, and that's why I keep saying it's very much about program design. Because if government takes the view that tax people in Klang Valley so that we can distribute money elsewhere, then it's not sustainable. So that's why it's very important to bring the kind of development. In the past, a lot of developments were infrastructure development. So you just create the jobs when it was built. Once it's commissioned and then the job creation fizzles out. We have to make sure that whatever infrastructure or project that we create for these regions, it actually creates long-lasting employment there. And if we keep to that general rule of thumb, it will have the spillover effect for the local economy. Last two questions from here. Yeah. Because we all want to go back, it's jam.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thanks YB for this opportunity. Datuk KSU. I Arfati from Pintare, Persatuan Industri Tenaga Boleh Baru dan Alam Sekitar. We have a shy of 200 members, which is maybe like future employees for Intan graduates, maybe. Okay, number one is thank you so much for NETR framework. It was a great framework, and we took it positively in our society association. But internally, we are managing between SME empowerment and also national agenda, which is happening downstream within our community, which is we want to empower the SME as well as help the government with the national agenda. And thank you so much also to emphasize on job opportunities which created by NETR framework as well. Okay, my question is, do the government, in this sense, MITI, is keen to share data center off-taker demand as it grows for RE developer as much as we do? Number two is the grid upgrade opportunity, as well as this is in particular with ASEAN chairmanship. Thank you for listening, and this should associate as well with ASEAN power grid narrative. Okay, thank you so much. Again, I'm IR Fatih from Pintare. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. On the data center of Tay, when a company applies to operate a data center in Malaysia, usually they would have specified straight away their power mix. And that's usually where the haggling is. And that's the bit where, you know, NETR was extremely important because it's to facilitate all this. If we keep asking people to come to Malaysia, they require RE, and then there's no RE, then we have problems. So I think the offtake, the demand for RE is overwhelming. After CRESS, because we have debottleneck in terms of, I think in May 2023, as late as is 1.5 years ago, a cabinet approved the plan that we allow a willing seller and willing buyer. In the past, everything has to go through a certain quota by single buyer. You know? Now you can go directly, willing seller and willing buyer. Now a lot of the discussion and haggling is about the willing charges, because then is a final tariff. You know? But as far as data center is concerned, I would imagine by now, as they plan to go into Malaysia, they would have decided their power mix. And they would, you know, they need to take from the grid for their base load, but they would have known what kind of capacity that they need from the RE, and they would have sourced it directly. It's just haggling between the corporate RE supplier to them, you know. So I think that's going to happen, and that's the intention of the whole, you know, policy. Of course, the challenge goes back to your second question. The reason why in the past single buyer has to set quota and so on is because investment into the grid. For us to match our RE ambition, the grid has to be upgraded, and at least we are looking at about 40-50 billion investments in the next 20 years. And that means that, you know, especially putting smart grid, putting battery storage and so on. Of course, you know, I take the view that 40 plus billion investments is calculated today. And as we go along, smart grid will become better. Technology for battery storage will become better. The cost will be more competitive. So eventually, what is being discussed now at government, now that TMB has willing charges, because we allow willing seller and willing buyer, how to come up with a fair and equitable model so that the upgrade of grid can be done sustainably by the government and TMB, the nitty-gritty. There are 2-3 models available. First model is basically we allow TMB to do everything to upgrade the grid in order to meet our RE plan. That means that TMB has to invest in smart grid and battery every year, then socialize all the costs through tariff, which, you know, I have a slight difficulty with that, you know, because the public will feel like, you know, why should we pay? Of course, even the tariff, you can differentiate the tariff. In fact, the tariff now has already been differentiated. The tariff to industry is very different than the tariff to household. So that's already been differentiated. So there are ways to socialize through differentiated tariff. The other model is a hybrid. That means that government every year needs to allocate a certain budget in order to upgrade, and then this will be offset in terms of tariff calculation and so on. So you don't need to socialize the tariff, the grid upgrade, because government takes up the cost from the very beginning. But of course, we have to see our cash flow, our fiscal capability, and so on. That process is already ongoing as well. Then the tariff discussion is happening because is IBR now is IBR 3, 4. It's going to IBR 5. No, 3. Yeah, the third IBR now is going to end by 2025. So the new negotiation for the next IBR is a tariff. The next negotiation for the next IBR 2026 onwards is happening, and I think these are part and parcel of NETR, and also so the discussion is ongoing, negotiation is ongoing between government and TMB, but the grid will have to be upgraded. Otherwise, you know, we will become one experience was Vietnam. There was a lot of take-up for downstream supply, so there was a lot of solar farms, but the grid was not ready because the grid was not upgraded enough, and therefore, you know, all those capacity could not be supplied to the grid, and there is a mismatch at some point in Vietnam. We've learned from that lesson. We want to make sure that the tariff and everything is all encompassing. Of course, the tricky bit is the dollars and cents, the nitty-gritty, to make sure that only those who really benefit out of this actually pays, and try not to socialize any cost from this. Last question. Yay, we survived.
Thank you. Okay, I'm Emily from Malaysia Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Association. Okay, 2 questions. The first question is about, just now YB said about the ODM, right? Original Design Manufacturing. But early of the year, we also heard a lot about clean room. Since then, okay, this clean room is also getting the same privilege like data center. They are tax exempted. Any equipment or system that you bring in, inclusive of air conditioning and air filtration. But in Malaysia itself, you already have a lot of air conditioning manufacturer and also air filter manufacturer. So I hope that YB can think about the RMK13. If they can get the tax exemption, the local manufacturer also enjoy the same.
You're talking about clean room? Clean room?
Clean room for the electronics.
I see.
Yes. So there are a lot of projects going on.
Right.
But for mechanical and electrical parts, right, it doesn't need to be tax exempted or whatsoever. Because local we already have the supply. So for local manufacturer, I think we have some concern. If they can import without tax and duty, we cannot compete at all. Especially it's come from China. Yeah. So that's one suggestion. Okay. The second, I think, is a very important thing. Okay, it's about the indoor air quality. Since just now, what we said about the COVID, a lot of people are concerning during that period about the air quality. But now seems like quiet, nobody concerned about it. But this is also very important. So why? Because if we can create this awareness, the economy for the related supply chain, same thing, it will go on. That's part of the thing that a lot of people never think about it. Other countries haven't think about it. So I think Malaysia can start. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's the fiscal request. I mean, I take note. So for tax exemption or tariff exemption for clean room equipments, basically, to put. So usually, I think what we do is that we look at the strategic industries and the components of it, and then once it becomes a national policy to push in certain direction, then other kementerian, including MOF for that matter, We'll then see how they would adjust the fiscal policies accordingly. Of course, the fiscal decision, incentive, and so on is part and parcel of the annual budget year after year. But I take note of that. On the clean, indoor air quality, I fully support. It's just that I tak pakai gas mask pula kan, face mask. But yeah, I think I don't know what happens, but people fall sick quite regularly nowadays. I think, but it's just that we live with that ever since COVID. So long as you don't die, if you fall sick every now and then because of cold, that's acceptable. But yeah, so that one tu sebenarnya dekat Kementerian Kesihatan. So I think I would like to take this opportunity. Thank you very much. You actually stayed throughout for almost 3 hours. We actually have a website, rmk13.economy.gov.my, where people can just submit anything, plans, views, dissatisfaction. You can draw, you can write, anything. Our teams at Kementerian Ekonomi are duty-bound to basically go through every single thing. We try our best to crowdsource for ideas and so on. What we do is that, we have the top-down. We also have the bottom-up so far from the industries and different. We also crowdsource from the website and all the others. And then we will map it. And then we will be able to see in terms of policy priorities, in terms of managing expectation and so on. So by all means, if you have the time, please submit, and then we'll try our best to accommodate. Once again, thank you very much. I just want to end like this. Of all the planning that I think this government does, RMK13 is extremely important because it's that one Malaysia plan where we are expected to become a developed nation, a high-income nation. It's most probably going to happen between 2027 2028. So that carries two burdens. Number one is that how do we sustain it after that? And then if we don't restructure our economy, then most probably we will not be able to sustain it, and then we may drop back. That's number one. But number two, more importantly, once you cross the threshold to become a developed nation, actually the expectation, the view, the thinking, the day-to-day, the socio-economic aspect of it must reflect a developed nation. We can't call ourselves a developed nation, but people look back and say, I don't see any difference between being a developed nation or not. So that's why a lot of what we plan for RMK13 is actually aspirational. It has to be aspirational. What is the kind of country that we want to inherit and to leave as a legacy, and what kind of a developed country model that we will have. So once again, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good evening.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.